everybody. Thank you for joining the session. Excited to see you all here. I hope that Civo Navigate has been fun for you. It's been good for me. I love all the sessions. I really love the outdoor space, by the way. So if I ever have my own conference, I will have an outdoor space. That was really good. So we're here to talk about the ROI of development happiness, why it matters, why we need to invest on it, but also why we need to show proof that those things actually make a difference. I don't have a clicker. How do I move, or who moves the slides? I see a big TV, but I don't know if I click on it. Thank you very much. Sorry, I forgot to ask. There we go. All right. Happiness. Why? Because, you know, it's a tough job, but it's important for all of us to be happy. There's a lot of, there's plenty of data in the world. There's like a body of hundreds of years of research on how humans perform better when they feel better. And if you think about it, I think we can all relate to this. If you had a bad night, if your kids kept you up at night, or you were out having too much fun and then you have to go to work the next day, we don't perform as equal as when you're like in full shape and well rested, healthy. And the same thing goes for kind of your mental health, physical, all of those things. So it's very important for all of us to think about this. So I'm going to be sharing some experience and kind of what we've seen as we get more into this topic. But my name is Ramiro. I am the founder and CEO of Okteto. Okteto is a company that's building a platform for automating dev environments on Kubernetes. So we spend a lot of time every day talking to companies about dev experience, dev workflows. And I'm going to share some of the things that we've learned, not only tech, but also like the human aspect of team and all those things. Before Okteto, I was an architect at Atlassian. Atlassian is a company that really believes in teams and the power of collaboration. The stock price for Atlassian is TEAM, T-E-A-M, because they believe so much on that. And I learned that a lot, so we'll share more of this. I am from Mexico, but I was born in Oakland. I was born in Mexico, but I live in Oakland, in the Bay Area. If anybody is there, or if you ever go to an event there, please say hi. Always looking forward to connect with more people in the Civo and cloud native community. And I love talking about cloud native development, dev experience, open source. I worked building chat products for a very long time, so emojis and memes are also part of what I love doing. If you scan that QR code, that will take you to my blog. I don't post that often, but I do post the slides. My social links are there. But if you just look up my name, I have a very unique name, so I'm easy to find on like LinkedIn, Mastodon, Twitter, and maybe Blue Sky, if I could convince Siam to give me an invitation. All right, so about 10 years ago, give or take, Mark Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz of Netscape wrote in my opinion, one of the fundamental essays in our industry, which is software is eating the world. It was 10 years ago, and he talked about, if you haven't read it, it's a small essay, a few pages long, where he talks about how every company will become a software company. And he was right. If you look at our space, if you walk around, if you talk to people at this conference, I've met people that work in software companies, in pharma, in traditional enterprises, in supermarkets, in insurance companies, and everybody shares the fact that we are all building software internally. Nowadays, it's really hard to not interact with software. If you wake up and you pick up your phone, software. If you make coffee and you have a modern coffee maker, software, your fridge, your car, the toll booth, it's everywhere. So what happens? Well, now everybody's a developer. I mean, in this room, please show of hands, who is a developer or who interacts with code somehow in your daily life? It is at a conference, it's what I was expecting, but this happens everywhere, right? So everybody's becoming a developer. It's great. As an industry, we're growing. We're no longer the niche that it was when I was in college a few years ago. Software was a very tight niche. I remember, like, I was an early SUSE user in college, and it was like this kind of secret cabal. You had to know the right person in the library to get the disk to install, Linux in your box. That's no longer the case, right? We have an industry where some people come to this traditional path of CS, of software engineering. Others come from boot camps. Others change careers, and that's good. more and more people are developers because it's becoming more and more a super important industry. And this is one of my first hot takes on this is we have developers everywhere. But the role of developers is not to write code. Our job is not to ship features. Our job is to create business value through code. We automate things. We move bits from one place to the other to create business value for our organizations, for our customers, for our users, for the world. And this is something very important to keep in mind. I will get back to this because business value is something that all of us, as practitioners, as members of the tech community, need to keep in mind. And when we talk about developer happiness, I know it sounds weird, happiness, business value, but there is a middle point that we need to understand that I think will help us all make a difference in our day-to-day work, lives, both. So as I was saying earlier, healthy teams overperform unhealthy teams. This is, I don't think this is a hot take. There's a body of work on this. Everything from like psychological safety, high-performing organizations, amazing like sports teams. We see this over and over again. It's not just about skills. It's not just about resources. It's about the overall health of this unit of people working together towards a common goal. This doesn't just happen. Having a healthy organization, and I'm using organization as a team of one, a team of two, a team of thousands, right? Having a healthy organization requires intention and requires a strategy. Even in the startups, when I started my company, 3 people on day 1, we had to work on this. Culture, good work, high-performance organizations, they just not happen. Like, it's something you have to work on. So it requires intention, it requires a strategy, and it requires money. Money, resources, call it what it is. You need resources to run these initiatives and to have happy, healthy teams. So we're talking about developer happiness. So let's talk about the opposite. What is developer sadness? What causes teams to not be healthy, to underperform? Again, there's a lot of work on this. If any of you, I have a fascination for psychology, organizational psychology, and all those things. It's fascinating. There's a lot of topics there on this. But through the years and through my experience working for a startup, large companies, small companies, successful companies, and not so successful companies, friction is, in my opinion, the #1 cause of unhappy dev teams. And friction comes in many shapes. This is from Webster Merriam Dictionary. I hope that your friction does not come from the sound produced by the movement of air through a narrow constriction. That's not the teams I'm talking about. But I'm talking about the force that resists motion between 2 bodies in contact. Friction leads to unhappy developers. Friction is when you're trying to accomplish something, and there's something in the environment, in your team, in your organization, that is actively preventing that. Unhappy developers lead to unhappy teams. And unhappy teams lead to unhappy, unhealthy organizations. And going back to business value, an unhealthy organization is a business risk. Because your competition, if they are a high-performing team and you are not, they are going to beat you. This is why startups, good startups, always beat big companies. This is why certain companies who care about these things constantly ship good stuff compared to other companies who ship bad stuff. It's important, and this is something that we all need to actively fight against. And friction exists at multiple levels. And I think this is one of the topics I want to spend a bit more time talking, which is we don't see friction as just, hey, I need to code faster. I mean, it is, right? Or, hey, I'm waiting for my very long CI, CD. That is what I normally talk about when I'm talking about dev experience and friction in software teams. But it exists everywhere. And to me, there are 3 levels of friction that we can look into. Inner loop friction, how fast it is to ship code, write code, get some feedback, whether it's machine feedback, like a unit test, or from your peers, like a pull request review. Outer loop friction, which is how hard it is for me to have a code in my IDE, on code, on set, whatever you're using, Vim. How long is it and how hard it is to get that line of code into my product, into my website, into my customer's hands? And number 3 that I think we forget a lot is organizational loops. How hard it is to do your work. How hard it is to design a new feature, to convince the stakeholders that you have to ship this, you have to build this, to get the resources and the teams to be able to accomplish stuff. So I see them as all these 3. And when you think of your day-to-day, even if you're a team of 1, think about this, right? Code, inner loop, fast feedback loops, outer loop, shipping, automating, all that stuff, but also organizational. How hard is it to make a decision? How hard is it to ship something, evaluate, and come back? So it's a lot. And to me, friction is what causes a lot of developer sadness, unhappiness, unhealthiness, call it what you may. Because sometimes it feels like this. It feels like every day you're pushing something uphill, and it just doesn't get better. I've left jobs because of this. I've worked for teams at very successful companies, very well-known companies where this was my day-to-day, and it was terrible. I think I am a okay developer, and in those teams, you know what happened? I just didn't work on anything meaningful because it was just I don't want to deal with all this friction at all these levels. And this is an example of what happens when you have an unhealthy organization, an unhealthy team. There's no innovation. Every task feels like you're pushing that ball uphill. Developers tend to work on things that are not important. If you work on a team that is building a lot of developer tools, internal, that's always a good symbol of hey, they're not really working on what the business needs because of friction. Bike sharing happens a lot, which is when you start to discuss non-important things, when you're discussing font sizes, colors, unless you're a designer, that's a different story. Application patterns, all that, instead of discussing customer value, that can be a sign of this. And at the end of the day, you end up with a team where nothing meaningful gets shipped over a long period of time. And going back to some of the earlier slides, this is not an individual's fault. I'm talking about organizations, teams that are unhealthy. This doesn't happen from one day to the next. This takes a while. Something to keep thinking as we all analyze our teams and what can we do. So as I was saying, right, healthy teams overperform unhealthy teams. This requires intention. This requires a strategy. You can't show up one day, join a new team, be okay, team, we're all happy, we're all healthy, we're all going to ship wonderful things. No, it's meaningful work. It takes time. And as I was saying earlier, it takes money. And that's why we're talking about the ROI of developer happiness. Because show of hands, who here believes that we should have happy work environments? I mean, yes. I knew the answer. I don't think anybody wants to work on a sad place. So great, right? You're in a team that's going to have some challenges. You're yes, happy team. We need resources. We need to start this new initiative, X, Y, Z. You go to your team lead. You go to your CEO, CFO, whatever, and you're hey, I need resources. Give me money. And here I'm using money as a proxy for resources, right? It could be time. It could be initiative. It could be headcount. It could be cash for an event, an offsite, any of those things, right? If you go and you say, hey, show me the money owner, the budget holder, the approver is going to say no. Especially right now, right? Where we live in a world where money is no longer free, where organizations are becoming more and more conservative, at least for now. We went through some crazy times when it comes to revenue, money and budgets. Now there's another correction where CFOs are tightening the belt. They're no to everything. And it kind of makes sense. If you ask me for money, if your kid says, hey, can I have $100? You're not going to be okay, here. You'll be what do you want it for? Are you going to just set on fire? Are you going to do something productive with it? And that's why we, as developers, have that responsibility. Because we don't want to just say no. We want to create something that makes sense for everybody. Because our role is to create business value through software. is not just to like spend money, like burn runway. It's not just kind of like write code because we love it, even though we do, and I do it in spare time, different thing. It's about creating business value. And the more business we create, the better for everybody. And this is why we need to prove that there is an ROI on our investments in developer happiness. I asked ChatGPT, hey, give me a graph of what ROI is. I got this super smart graph that says that if you invest more money, you get more ROI. I don't think that's quite how it works. I wish it was, because then my company would be doing fantastically, but no. It's not just about investing money, it's investing money on tasks that are smart. And that's where we can all help. Because we're not going to get far if we can measure it. So think about developer happiness as a feature. Think of it as something, as a project that you need to build a fast loop for to measure the success of it. And the ROI of developer happiness can be measured. It's not that hard, really. There's a lot of organizations, a lot of companies growing this space, and it's possible. And the way to do that is to put the work. And the first thing you have to do is understand where you are. How do you know this? Ask your developers. Really, like just go to your team and ask them. There's this person, Laura Tacho. She has a company now called GetDX.com. She's been one of the earliest, at least that I'm aware of, promoters of the usage of developer surveys as a way to measure tangible progress on your team. So that is what like the first part. The first step to measuring the ROI of our developer happiness experiences, let's understand where we are. Do a survey, low cost, if you're using Google Workspaces, forms.google.com, add 3 questions. And this is something we do internally in my company. How much do you love your job? What gets in the way of you doing the best work of your life? How easy is it for you to get a change pushed to production? These questions are simple, they are vague, and they're open-ended by design, because you want to, it's not about the question and like a number, it's about how people answer that question. Through questions like this, especially if you apply them every 3, every 6 months, the same questions, and you measure the output, and you sit down and analyze the output, you get so much insight. Because you're going to get everything from my inner loop. It's really hard. Like, I don't know where to get, like my dev environment configured from, all the way to the PM on the other team always says no to everything I propose. You get everything. But this is very important, because once you have a base, you can do a lot. And there's a YouTube talk that Laura did at Let Dev London, What Dashboards Don't Tell You, where she starts to make this play for don't look just at dashboards, don't use just like numbers of like, hey, how many commits, how many deploys, how long a PR stays before it gets reviewed. Also look at this kind of like more quantitative data. It's a great talk. Just search for What Dashboards Don't Tell You. It's on YouTube. It's 13 minutes. It's way better than my talk. But check it out. So we go back to this, right? You measure, you ask your questions, you figure out where you are, where your team is. Hopefully your team is super happy. Maybe it's not quite so happy, but either way, do apply these things, because happiness is just like when you have a plant. It's not just a point in time, right? You have to tender to it. You have to constantly put work on it to make it better for everybody. So we went back to inner loop, outer loop, and organizational loop. So once you have your survey, you did all these things, what do you do? Well, here's where you can do a lot of different things. And going back to the previous slide, it's very important to think, hey, what are you going to optimize for? Just like when we're writing code, you can't fix everything on one day. So you have to pick, do you want to focus on inner loop friction? Are you going to focus on outer loop friction? Do you want to focus on organizational friction? Look for things that are easier to fix. Small, constant wins are very powerful. Don't try to change your entire company culture on day one. Start with something you can control. Start with your team. Create like an oasis of happiness on maybe a desert of chaos and sadness. I hope that's not where you work at. But if not, a lot of people here are hiring. But think about those things, right? Things that I've seen work really well to kind of improve this happiness and create more happiness. Fast onboarding. This one is amazing. Like, think of you when you join a new company or a new team or a new project. You're there, super excited. This is the best thing ever. You know, you ideally or typically sign up to work on that thing. You apply, you interview, you met the people. You're excited. And then you join. And then it takes 6 months before you are productive, before you feel productive. That's not a happy place, right? You had all these emotions, all this excitement, and it just slowly got away. So fast onboarding, getting people feeling productive. And feeling is very important. Maybe it's not measurable. Maybe it's not actually pushing to production on day one. But this feeling of like, I can get things done fast helps a lot because excitement composes. When you have one person excited, they get others excited, and everybody benefits from this. The founder of Lunch Darkly, he's a friend of mine. When he started his company, one of his kind of first goals was like, no matter the size of my dev team, I want developers to be able to push something to production. One line of code, fix one typo on the first week, whether we're 5 or 300. Because for him it was very meaningful to do that, because then he felt like that will drive the culture in the right direction. And I saw them when they were 10. I've seen them now, they're like, I think 200, 300. And that kind of ethos is still there. You might not be able to get it right all the time, but building towards that, making sure that everything you do is aligned to that, it's great. Quick inner loop, very important. Once you know what you want to fix, once you're there and says, hey, I want to improve this, you want to do it fast. You want to go as fast as, you know, your ideas, your thoughts. You don't want to like write code and then wait 10 minutes before you see those changes in your dev environment. I built an entire company, or I'm building, I guess, on that topic. So happy to talk about that after. But it's very important to have quick inner loops. Pave roads. Make it easy for the 80% of people. And this might sound like it's just for code inner loops, but it applies to everyone. Like, pave roads where like you set up practices for everybody to do the 80% of the things they have to do in an easy way. Whether it's a self-service deployment, file a ticket, schedule a call with a customer, get one-on-one time with a director. Create those roads for your organization. Self-service is very important. An outer loop is important because you want to see progress. You want to feel the progress, right? Very important. Iterating fast. See the output of your work. Whether you're a PM, a test engineer, software engineer, director, exec, you want to see the output of your work because that creates meaning, that creates happiness, and all of these things can be measured. And very importantly, reduce the cognitive load. The more things you have to keep in your head, the less effective, the more stressed, the less happy you're going to be. And when you think about this, do think of organizational loops. Do find ways to make things easier for your organization. Have clear ownership. Don't create a culture of blaming people when something fails, but do hold people accountable. Blameless postmortems are very popular, but you have to do the work. It's not just about like, hey, something happened, okay, no big deal. No, you have to be accountable at, hey, what happened, fix it. Because all those things create ownership, create responsibility, and they create meaning. Don't go forbidding things. Don't be like, oh, you can't deploy on Fridays, or you cannot do these things. Enable your team and let them, through ownership, through accountability, to make the right decision. Two-way doors is a framework for decision-making, where they say, hey, if there's a two-way door, don't slow it down because you can always come back and change doors. Be careful about one-way doors because those are the ones that you can go back. Those are when you want to be very careful, put a heavy process on. But for most decisions, if they can be undone with no serious damage, just don't forbid people to go to that door. Let them go, make the mistake, come back, do a postmortem, don't blame, hold them accountable. And all of these things can be measured. You can measure if you have ownership. You can do analysis if you have ownership of all the things in your team. If you're doing blameless postmortems. How fast do you go from like somebody pitched an idea to like the MVP has been shipped? All these things can be measured. All these things will improve your organization's happiness index, the GNI of your organization. And very important, and I repeat this again, reduce cognitive load. Just like friction is, in my opinion, the biggest cause of sadness, for dev teams at least, cognitive load is one of the biggest enemies of making things better. And there's many definitions of this. I like this one. Cognitive load theory is this philosophical, psychological theory, came up in the 80s, that pretty much talks about how the amount of information your working memory can process at any given time is limited. And the more things you keep on your head, the harder it is. You can apply this to dev environments. You don't want every developer to be installing everything by hand. You can do this for how your system works. You want documentation, so you don't have to memorize everything. You want a playbook, because during an outage, you don't want people to have to remember the 15 steps on where you get your logs, where you answer the on-call, how you notify your customers. This is something very important to keep in mind at all levels. Inner loop, outer loop, organizational loop. So as I was saying before, think of all the things I mentioned here, but if you can measure them, you're not going to get far. We're all here, we all work in technology. We know that we have to measure things. If you ship, you measure your deployment speed, you measure your headcount, your runway, because that's how we see progress. So just like a feature, create fast feedback loops for your developer happiness initiatives. Here are examples of how to measure things. How long it takes a developer to push their first commit to production. As I was saying earlier, that's one important thing to measure, I think. How many story points did you ship? I used to work in Jira. I do think it's one that's valuable, not because of the number, because numbers are meaningless when seen in isolation. It's more of like, is your team doing less now than 6 months ago? If yes, check what's going on. Are they doing more? Amazing, you're doing something right. They have maybe more ownership, is leading to like more things shipping, maybe because they have less friction. They're able to complete more things. Developer surveys, to me, one of the most important tools we have. Very cheap, easy to implement, but tangible results you can measure and show to your decision makers. DORA and Space Metrics are two frameworks that are relatively new. They came in the last 10 years. I believe DORA came from Google, if I remember correctly, and Space maybe came from either Microsoft or Accenture. But they give you some metrics that they believe are good proxies for your team's morale and performance. How quickly are you shipping? How long does the code stays before a pull request is merged? Things like that. And kind of a trailing indicator, but attrition. If people are leaving your team, that is a signal that something is not well, because most people leave teams because they have bad managers or meaningless work, not because of some other contrived idea we might want to believe in, not because they don't believe in the project or because they don't believe in the mission of your company. It tends to be for more tangible things like terrible work environment, bad mentorship. So keep an eye on these things. Don't put them in the dashboard like Laura says. Just look at them. And again, you should not be looking at these things every day. Each of these numbers on its own does not mean anything. You want to be looking at trends. You want to be able to say, over the past, and it takes time, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, my teams have been evolving in this direction. Here are my data points. Here's what's happening. Here are the inflection points. Because that is how we change this. And this is how we then go to our decision makers. We show them something is wrong. We have ideas. We propose initiatives. We show them we can measure it. And then we get more resources to do it again. And just like an MVP on code, we can MVP our dev experience, our multi-level loops, and our developer happiness. There's a lot of like trends out there in the market that are kind of focusing on this at all levels. You know, there's a lot of companies enabling developers, everything from like dev environments on demand, self-service infrastructure, platforms. AI, of course, playing a big role in helping us augment developers, make things easier for developers. Dev experience automation, platform engineering, cloud infra as ways to scale teams. All of this is to make the lives of developers easier. But remember, it's not just about technology. It's not just about, can I deploy my environment fast? It's about, do I have a healthy team? Can I do this for a very long time? Can I sustain high-performance work for a very long time? Because it's not easy. And before I used to hate sports analogies, but now that I'm a CEO, I actually start to like them. Because if you look at like, how many teams in the last 50 years have been like at the top for a long time? Not that many, right? And we had like in basketball, the Bulls in the 90s, and now we have the Warriors. And they're doing something right. And a lot of what they do is not just talent, it's putting a team together, fostering good practices, measuring the impact, and doing it again. In sports, it's easier. You have, championships, wins, and that. But we can do the same thing in organizations. And we can put an ROI to developer happiness. We can start measuring things. And we can start proving to leadership that we have to invest in this, that we are humans, that software is, at the end of the day, a creative endeavor, that AI is going to help us do more, but we have to prove that we're going to be better for it and not just like doing grueling work until we can't do it anymore and we burn out and we leave. Leaving a team is very expensive for the organization. Replacing someone who's been working with you for years is super expensive. Losing institutional knowledge is very expensive. And all of these things can be measured, and we can use that to tell our bosses, hey, I need budget for this. I need to do an offsite. I need to like a t-shirt to celebrate a milestone for my team. I need more time with a PM to be able to voice our ideas of product, at all these levels. All of this is very important. Ask for it, but prove that there is value. So as I said at the beginning, software is everywhere. We're all developers now, and software is a huge business differentiator. The better your organization is at building software, the better your business will do. So anything that makes it easier, that makes you build better software, is good for the business. And if it's good for the business, there will be resources put behind that to do more of it. So keep this in mind. Let's all push for happier teams, but let's measure the ROI of developer happiness so we can go get that budget and continue to do all these great things that we all, I hope, love doing. That's it. Thank you very much. I hope this is useful. There's another QR code there for feedback on this session. It's the first time I do this talk, so I hope it's good. And please, if you have any questions here, or I'll be around later.
We got the mic for questions. Sorry, it just popped up here.
What are some ways that you suggest folks reduce cognitive load?
Cognitive load, that is good. Different levels. The whole movement of platform engineering is helping a lot. But in a broader thing, I think assuming that everybody will know everything is something we all kind of do by default. Like somebody joins on your team, you're like, of course, you should know how this works, where to get. So being heavy on written documentation, I find is very helpful. Always, remind yourself that, put yourself on the side of the beginner in your team. What do I need to get started? And really invest on that. I'm a big fan of like playbooks, internal documentation, guides. If you can make them external, even better, because your customers will benefit. But that is one. The other is creating the right abstractions. I think when you have good ownership, you can create good abstractions where like says, hey, not every team needs to own everything. But the most important thing is making this decision, being vocal about what you're not taking care of. Like, it's something I tell my teams at Okteto is like, when you say no, it's important to be clear. I'm not focusing on that area. I'm not going to touch that piece. I'm not working on this feature. I'm not working at this level of the stack. So you draw a line, and then you have to fight for that. But those are ways that it really helps. Because we're all humans. It's all about communication. We all want to do a good job, but we have to be open on like, hey, we can't do everything. This is where I draw my line. And you keep it, you document it, you chat about it a lot, and the communication, talking and talking and talking, helps build this practice, and eventually you'll be in a team that has less of that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I think we have one more. Did you have a question? Okay, great.
So you mentioned dev surveys in your talk. One time I gave accurate feedback on an internal survey at a company, and I got fired 2 days later. How do you make people trust that they can give frank feedback on a survey?
That's a really good question, and sadly there are organizations like that. Psychological safety is real. Like if you don't feel safe, you're going to give good feedback. There's two sides of that answer. I think from a organization perspective, for anybody here who runs teams, who runs companies, this is something super important to invest in. Leaders need to show they're open to feedback. You need to show vulnerability. There's actually a lot of techniques on like how you answer, how you listen. Active listening for any leader out there is a very important skill to develop. I've had struggled with that a lot in the past. I've learned. There's trainings you can take on this, on how to listen, how to be open to feedback. That's one. Being very vocal about, hey, please give us feedback. It's okay. Acting on it, vocal, is very important. From the other side, when you're working for a company, it's very tricky because sadly, a lot of people are just not good at this. Like we all sometimes get personal of like, hey, this is my thing. And if you say something that, if you say that my child is ugly, I'm going to get mad at you instead of like looking and be like, yeah, well, kind of is. I don't have kids. I have cats. They're amazing. But that's important. And that's where like, if you see an organization like that, and I've worked for teams like that, at some point you have to leave them because they're terrible. But yeah, but like pushing this culture of like being open, being vulnerable from work, and reinforcing that, repeating it, asking for it, is very important. What some companies do, more tactical, is they make the surveys anonymous.
Oh, this was anonymous. Supposedly.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, making those things helps. At some point, there's nothing you can do, but definitely like building that environment of trust, it takes a long time. And it needs to start from leadership. It can be like, that's one of the few things that it cannot be bottoms up. Like if you don't have leaders who care about this, if you have a choice, find a different team.
We've got one over here. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah, hey, great talk, Ramiro. One quick question here. So sometimes in products there comes a time when the teams are not unhappy because you're doing something wrong, like explicitly, but because they're just not as passionate about the product that you're building anymore. Like you reach a phase where you're not building the core roadmap anymore. You're like catering to enterprise requests, compliance requests, and just regular errands that the companies eventually need to do. So what do you do when you reach that stage?
What I've seen happens is, and I worked for Microsoft in my career, very large enterprise company in kind of that stage. What I've seen happens when people lose excitement is because they don't find meaning in what they're doing. I think that sharing and this is what I had that slide on like business value, sharing the impact of what you're doing is something that teams need to work more on. Because we all fall in love with the shiny new thing and the cool feature, but we all need to work together to say, no, you should fall in love with the problem you're solving, with the people you're helping, because sometimes shipping that boring feature actually enables a lot of people to do their job. And that is exciting. So I feel like and this is like a constant work. Like you have to work on like focusing on the meaning of your work. It's not what you do, but what you accomplish. And I think that healthy organizations, when all of these things happen that I talked before, even when they're working on boring features, quote unquote, they're excited because they know they're solving an important problem. They know that their contributions have meaning to their users. And this could be internal, external, open source, your end customers. But that's what I feel like is very important, to stress on the meaning of your work, the impact, and kind of like the org loop of like, hey, you're building something that's making a difference for someone. I find that motivating. Some people, they just want to do like day one work and then go somewhere other thing. But I find like most people, when they have meaning, they stay there for a long time.
Any more? We have time for maybe one more. Okay.
So can you forecast or estimate a developer experience program? Like the impact of the program, sorry.
Yes. I mean, it depends on your team and kind of the size and maturity, but in time, I would say that you should at least plan for like 6 months. Like I haven't seen like meaningful change happen before 6 months, because you want to be something that is constant, repeatable, and you want to measure like several times. Like we do quarterly surveys to kind of measure that, and our goals tend to be, hey, in 6 months, 1 year. Budget-wise, it's hard because it depends on the initiative you're making. Like some of them are like free, like this kind of like surveys. Others might require you to invest on like tooling or even like hiring owners. But I would say that you cannot expect to make meaningful change in a team in less than 6 months, because you need to earn the trust, especially if you're like in a bad shape as a team. You need to earn the trust of them. You have to show that it's not just because today you woke up and decided, hey, I want to do that. It has to be constant, consistent, and you have to kind of be open about, hey, we're trying this. It's going to take this time. That's what I've seen works well. And for larger orgs, it might take more, like it might take years. But less than, even in startups, like my company is small, 30 people, but even in this kind of size, less than 6 months is not realistic.
Okay.
That's so good.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Give a hand for Ramiro.
Ramiro!